How's it going, YouTube? Oxy here, and welcome back. So today I'm gonna be reviewing Godzilla Minus One, which has finally came out here in the U.S. Right, it came out over a month ago in Japan, which of course, being Toho made, makes sense. It came out November 3rd, I want to say. Uh, on the 70th anniversary of Godzilla. So, it made sense, but wow. Can I say this is like easily one of the best Godzilla movies recently for sure, but ever, period? Yeah. So, with Godzilla, of course, his many different eras, you can make the argument that a lot of the films just aren't that good, right? I think that's like an understood, it's just like a common knowledge, right, amongst fans that a lot of maybe the Showa movies and a bit in the Heisei and Millennium, like they have ridiculous elements. So you're like, oh, like they're more campy, like fun. But I think in recent memory with like Shin Godzilla especially and this one, and even the American ones like the MonsterVerse, I think is doing pretty well. I'm excited for Godzilla versus Kong next year. Despite all that, I think that uh, Shin especially and this one really prove that uh, like Godzilla can actually have like great movies. And it's cool that both times were by Toho, of course, the original studio. But they really show that, like, there's a reason why he's the longest running single franchise. I think the MCU probably has more movies than Godzilla at this point, but it's like a collective of so many characters. Whereas Godzilla is one, right? Like one character. There are different continuities, yes, like they start over, but James Bond, I think, is the only closest second, but even by then, I think Godzilla gaps him by like 15 movies, close to 20 now. So, yeah, but Minus One, seriously, what a blast. I saw it on this comes out later, on the 29th. It was like they did a little fan event at the theater I went to. So they played a lot of like Godzilla related stuff, like old commercials or little facts before the movie. So it added to it, but of course that doesn't pertain to like the review. But a quick plot, like details, right? So spoilers, I will say, but you've been warned. But I mean, again, right off the bat, it's one of the best Godzilla movies ever. So go see it if you're a fan. Even if you aren't, it's worth it. Like seriously, I love what they did with them. But okay, so our main character, our movie follows a young kamikaze pilot. Oh, yeah, I guess I should mention this movie takes place in World War II. World War II post, right, like right after. And yeah, I think that's where the Minus One title comes from. Like, it's not a prequel, but it's it's not in modern times where most Godzilla movies are, right? Whenever they're filmed, they take place like usually around the time. This one is in the past, and not a origin movie. Godzilla already exists. Like, we don't get how he was made and all that. Like, he just already is, which I do appreciate. It's kind of like Batman. It's like, look, I don't need the origin every single time. Like, we get it. Like, it's understood how he came to be. Um, Anyways, our story follows a failed kamikaze pilot, Koichi. Of course, he's Japanese, and he lands. His plane is faulty, and he lands on like a repair island, Oda Island, I believe, where he meets a mechanic by the name of Tachibana, and others on the island. And they're repairing it, but they tell him there's nothing wrong with it, kind of insinuating like he fled from his duty, because in Japan at the time it was very much a like you're patriotic for your country, where you're willing to die for it. Like, don't surrender. Like, again, kamikaze meaning you will literally, like, in a like suicide, will crash your plane into like the enemy boats. And a failed one, you're seen as a coward, like a disgrace, right? So that's essentially what Koichi did. And of course, the people there already are like, oh, like, they have a feeling against him. But that night, Godzilla comes on shore. And man, what an opening. Because usually they make you wait for it, but can I say that Godzilla in this movie is ferocious? Like, he's this genuinely terrifying. Like, they definitely gave him like he's a villain. He very much is. I mean, that's what he originally was. But they definitely made him scary. They probably took some cues from like Jurassic Park, because he attacks the town, the outpost, and he does like kill people. Steps on them, he bites them, he like throws them. Like, you genuinely see him like bite, throw people. Like, he's an animal, right? He's a mutated animal, so he definitely gives that, like, yeah, he's just like angry. Like, I don't know, but that first scene is just great, where they're all fighting. Again, being that the Koichi character is a pilot, the plane has a gun, and they're like, go shoot it, but he freezes up, and one of the other mechanics like shoots Godzilla, causing him to obviously be distracted and like attack everyone. And Koichi passes out, and in the morning finds out that everyone except the Tachibana characters died. And the guy obviously is like, you're a disgrace, like, this is all your fault. And essentially, the war is like over. We jump ahead a bit. There's like a couple time skips in the beginning. The war's over, so Koichi's heading back home, where he finds out that his parents have died during the air raids. And he meets a similarly orphaned woman by the name of Noriko. And she has a baby named Akiko, who is not hers. And they essentially become a family unit. Like, she stays with him, and they have this adopted daughter, essentially. And we spend some moments like getting to know them, right? Like, showing the time passing, them living together. And like throughout the film, but our character Koichi has like PTSD, so there's moments where he dreams about the island or just things like that, which I think that it does a good job of like just showing the human nature of like war and the effect it has on people. And of course, times are tough. They need a job, they need money to at least support Akiko, right? And our Koichi gets a job where we meet essentially the rest of the main cast. He's on a boating crew, like he's a minesweeper. Of course, it's dangerous, but it pays a lot of money. And there we meet the characters, basically by their nicknames. You have the captain of the ship, you have the kid, who's just like a young guy, and then you have the doc, like a smart scientist type who's on the ship with them. And yeah, they encounter Godzilla again later on in the sea, and it's up to the personal citizens later, like, others, to eventually find a way to stop Godzilla, because the government, Japan has just had the war, right? They were bombed, so they're not in the shape to, and then others can't get involved because like tensions between the U.S. and the Soviets, because again, it's World War II. It's shortly after we get into the Cold War, so it's all historically accurate, which I appreciate. And yeah, that's pretty much the plot. Of course, like I said, the boat crew that turns out the doc is actually working for the government or something, and they have to devise a plan to kill Godzilla because they like blow him up, but he regenerates, because you see that he's actually he's radioactive, he mutates, so they're not dealing with any normal monster at that point. But what I can praise this movie for is not only Godzilla's like just his depiction, but the CGI for this film too. Now, to be fair, in a lot of international movies, the CGI isn't up to par as like the U.S. I mean, you know, Hollywood, we're usually known for being the best at that sort of thing. But I can say the film actually holds up really well. Like there's shots, which I don't know. I can't say if they used like an animatronic or even a guy in a suit. But there's shots like in the water again when they're on the ship, like shooting mines, and Godzilla's after them, where it's like him like peering out of the water, kind of like Jaws, but it looks real. Like it looks like scaly. Like I'm like I could see him actually being there. So I was like, it made me wonder. I'm like, was it CGI? Because then it looks really good, or was it like a robot? So that, and I'll say that the human story, which is always a criticism, right, a weakness for these movies, like I think it was done really well. Like you actually come to care for you know, the family unit that they have and his his friends like on the boat crew. And later on, so spoiler again, warning, spoiler, warning. Our character Noriko ends up dying. Where yeah, she like she gets a day job, and in the town that she's at, Ginza, I believe, a Godzilla comes ashore, and you know, Koichi shows up to like try to save her, like, and they actually find each other among the chaos. But Godzilla does his breath attack for the first time, which I love the detail that like the fins, his dorsal plates like pop out as he's like charging up, and when he shoots, they all like sink back in, kind of like you know, locked and loaded. And this version of the atomic breath is amazing because it's very much akin to an atomic bomb, right? Because Godzilla's like a symbolism for that, where instead of like a continuous like fire breath, it's like a blast, like he shoots it out, and then you see a big cloud, like a big explosion. So yeah, but in that town scene, she essentially sacrifices herself because of the big like blast. Of course, there's like knockback. She pushes Koichi behind like a wall, like a building where he'll be safe, but she essentially gets blown away, and then the like blown back. So it's assumed she's dead. We don't see her for like the rest of the movie. But yeah, like the human story, I think was really well, or just like his boat crew. Like you could tell they're just like, you know, they care for each other, and I really like this, kind of like Shin, how that movie was like a commentary on the Japanese government, like the bureaucratic system, right? Just like showing how really in the face of danger, it can be very tedious because like endless meetings. It's like they have a monster literally attacking. Meanwhile, they have to have meetings about like what they should do. Well, that film did a great job of that. This one is definitely a patriotic movie. I think so. Like it's very much a like, you know, proud to be Japanese and like the power in the people, because as I said, the government can't get involved. So it's up to like, you know, the private citizens, right? The common man to devise a plan. Um, and yeah, there's just like great scenes where they the characters like talk about they reflect on like the Japan and like how it's censoring a lot of like the Godzilla attacks, because of course they don't want to cause like panic in the population. They talk about how this country really like had they criticize like the that Japan devalued human life with the whole kamikaze thing. Kind of being like, there, the characters are reasoning with Koichi, who again has that guilt that, like, oh, I let, like, like the people on the island, like, if you had done your duty, you would have never came, they would have never died, right? Like, this whole, like, it's my fault. They reason with them, like, no, but I mean, it's human nature. Who wants to die, right? Like, you should live on, like, live, like, build a future, like, that sort of thing. And there's great scenes too where, like, they devise their plan. They're gonna go, try to do it, where it's like they essentially have to, like, catch Godzilla out in the sea with, like, these, they call them like Freon, but it's like these gas tubes, like they tie it around them, that would kind of cause them to sink. And the idea was hopefully he'd decompress, right, because of the great pressure of the ocean. And if that fails, they have like inflatables too that would bring him back up, well, that would cause a decompression. Sinking would be like he'd be killed by the pressure, like the pressure changes. And the kid, right, the younger, like, boat member, he's never been to war, and he has like a broken arm, and he's very passionate, like, I want to fight, right, like, I want to help, but they tell him to stay, like, stay back. They're like, no. The captain has a great line where he tells him, like, you're the future, like, kind of like it's a good thing, like, you've never experienced war, like, that's ultimately what you want, right? Like, as a people, you don't want to go to war. And they just tell him stay, like, the future's in your hands. And at first you're like, okay, so it's like the older generation is getting it done. But there's a great scene where I think it's not really expected, because it was done in a way where you're like, okay, we won't see the kid till maybe the end, where, in moment of need, they do the thing, Godzilla sinks, right? He does get damaged, he comes back, but he's still fighting, right? He's the G-Man, so he's still got fight in him. And, the war boats they use don't have enough to pull Godzilla out. So it's up to what I think is meant to be like the younger generation, like the kid, and a bunch of tugboats show up to help. And then with that help, they're able to get him to the surface, but it doesn't kill him ultimately. But I thought it was a great, like, it was showing, like, the future is now. You don't wait for, it's like you don't sit around and wait for things to get better. You do it now. And it's whether older generation, newer, like, you work together to prosper. So I thought that was really nice. Again, it very much gave, like, a patriotic, like, proud to be, right, for the Japanese people. It's like, just be proud of who you are, and you're more than capable of anything. So I applaud this movie and Shin, because they really show that like, be proud of who you are. And it's pretty nice too, because the Koichi character, again, he was a kamikaze pilot, and they get a plane they fix one. He has to find the Tachibana character, which of course they have their feelings towards each other, that they fix a plane, and he pretty much is determined after the Noriko, she's presumed dead, that he's like, no, like, too many people have died because of me. Like, essentially he's gonna live out he was deemed to do, be a kamikaze. So he was gonna do that. If the plane failed, he was gonna crash the plane with explosives into Godzilla. And yeah, he was gonna sacrifice himself, but thankfully he doesn't. He does crash the plane, which ultimately does kill Godzilla. But it's later shown that Tachibana basically told him to live, and the plane had like an eject button, which not many did back then, hence why it was like, you don't surrender, you killed yourself. But this one did. It was like a prototype plane, and he tells him to live, which I would have liked it if he had tricked him, because he had told him, like, oh, this button here is to fire, like, engage, or essentially take safety off before, you crash. Like, it would have been nice if the character tricked him, as in like he was like, no, you deserve to live, and it was like the eject. But nonetheless, it still works. They show later that he told him to live, like you deserve to live, like, you know. Again, going back to like human life is valuable. We shouldn't, don't treat it as like, you know, meaningless, because it's more valuable to this country that you live, you know, that you do something, than obviously giving it up for what, right? And of course, Godzilla's presumed dead, and at the very end, we find out that Noriko survived. They, you know, oh, like happy family. But she has something on her neck, whether it's like radiation sickness or part of like Godzilla's DNA that brings her back. She's back. And to no surprise, I think to many, Godzilla lives, right? Like he's destroyed. It's like his heart or just a piece of meat in the ocean, but then it starts regenerating. So he'll be back. But yeah, the film, again, the human story is great. The CGI is fantastic. Godzilla himself looks great. He's more similar to like a classic look. Like he's smaller in scale. And yeah, overall just really great stuff. And yeah, like I don't know, I was surprised. I really didn't expect it. I just thought it would be like, oh, it'll be like, you know, typical like dumb something, they bomb him or something. But I was, yeah, just blown away really by how good it really was. And despite being a foreign film, it was a packed theater that night, even being a early like release, right? Because it's out now, right? December 1st it came out pretty much everywhere, so you could go see it. But I highly recommend it. If I had to rate it, it's definitely a solid 9 out of 10, like for sure. You can make the argument as a Godzilla fan, this is like a 10 out of 10. It really is. It's really one of the best Godzilla films ever. Some people may argue the best, and I couldn't really, I'd be okay with that. But yeah, guys, Godzilla Minus One. Seriously, really great. The film is in Japanese. I guess I should mention that. It is in Japanese, subtitles, but nonetheless, I think the characters still do a good job. Like, despite the language barrier, they still do a good job of conveying emotion and just showing that, like, you know, you could tell when they're, you know, angry, when they're, like, it's so, you know what they're saying, even though it's like, yeah, it's subtitled. So, yeah, go watch it. It's seriously really great, and I'd even watch it again. That's how good I think it was. But yeah, guys, that's the review. Let me know what you think. If you like this type of content, I usually make videos twice a week. So please be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good jazz. And as always, everyone, I've been your host, Oxy. Take care, and I'll see you next time.